Good morning, scholars, and welcome back to Learning with Previ. Today we are starting the final domain, Frontier Explorers. We're on Lesson 1, titled Daniel Boone and the Opening of the West. And our learning goal is, I can describe the connection between the Appalachian Mountains and the settlers inability to move west. So right here, this is our school. We happen to be at Dove Academy of Detroit. The street that our school's on is Wexford. This school is located in a city. It's in the city of Detroit. If we go out, right there, all of this area is Detroit, and it's in the city of Detroit. And that city is in the state of Michigan. So this big mitten, well, it actually goes up higher than that. Let's see if I can get the whole thing. All of this is Michigan. This is the UP up here. This is the Lower Peninsula. Okay, all of this is Michigan. And this state is located in this big country right here, in the country of the United States. And it is on this continent right here, which is North America. This continent of North America right here. Okay. So there has not always been a country known as the United States of America. Native Americans were the first people known to live in North America, and European settlers did not originally live in North America. Long ago, the United States was much smaller than it is today. For a time, European settlers only lived on the east coast of what is now the United States. So right here, European settlers originally just lived in this area, right, in the 13 colonies. They went all the way down to here, okay? And over the next several days, you're going to be learning about how the United States grew in size and how that growth affected Native Americans, settlers, and the landscape. Let's take a look at these cards right here. In kindergarten, you learned about the very first people who lived in North America. And that was these people, the Native Americans. Okay? This is gonna be our first card in our timeline, okay, that we're gonna create. And that'll help you remember that the Native Americans were the first people known to live in North America. Okay? You also learned about the European explorer named Columbus, who traveled by ship to the continent of North America. Okay, let's see if I can get this to go out. Here we go. So right here, this is what the globe looks like. Okay. So he traveled from Europe, which is over here, okay, all the way over here to North America. Let's see. I believe that he originally didn't know that these two continents were here, and he was trying to travel from Spain and go all the way around. And he was trying to go to India. Let's see if we can find it. Right there. He was trying to get to India. Columbus never really realized that he didn't make it to India. Instead, he was in North America. Okay. After Columbus's voyages, more and more groups of people from various countries in Europe decided to make the trip across the Atlantic Ocean to explore North America. Okay. One of these groups was called the Pilgrims, that came from England and landed at Plymouth Rock along the east coast of North America. There we go. Right, there's the location of Plymouth Rock. Let's see if I can zoom this back out. Okay, so they landed right here in Plymouth Rock, and the Pilgrims look like these right here. This is what I think they look like. Okay. As you learned in the last domain, that more and more people came from Europe after Columbus and formed 13 colonies. Before the United States became a country, there were 13 colonies that were ruled by the British king and government. These colonies displaced many Native Americans already living in the area and forced them to leave their homes and move west. The 13 colonies decided they wanted to declare themselves free and an independent nation, and Thomas Jefferson was asked to write the Declaration of Independence. So let's see if we can find that here. Here's the Declaration of Independence. We have to turn it so we can see it. There's the Declaration of Independence that Thomas Jefferson wrote. Okay. The colonists declared independence from Great Britain, which resulted in the Revolutionary War, and that's what this does. It declares their independence. In today's Read Aloud, you'll briefly review what we've already learned about early history of the United States and the people who lived there. You're also going to hear about one of the first explorers of the American West, Daniel Boone. So listen carefully to find out more about one of the difficulties or challenges faced by Daniel Boone and other people who wanted to move west. Today, people from all over the world live together in communities from one end of North America, the North American continent, to the other, from the Atlantic Ocean, which is over here, the Atlantic Ocean, in the east, to the Pacific Ocean in the west, and everything in between. This map of North America shows the United States in green. You can see that lots of thin white lines right here, all these thin white lines, okay, outlining the states that make up our country, the United States of America. However, hundreds of years ago, the map of the United States was much smaller than it is today. So this is right here. This is the outline of the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. Here's Michigan, which looks like the mitten, and then this is the outline of the Upper Peninsula. So Lower Peninsula, Upper Peninsula. Okay. Long, long ago, the only people who lived on the continent of North America were people known as Native Americans. Native Americans have lived in North America for thousands of years. Native Americans lived in both seasonal and permanent villages. They used great knowledge of the land and its resources to survive. At the same time, far away on the other side of the ocean, many other people had their own towns and villages. These people lived on the continent of Europe and were known as Europeans. Right here, it's all orange on this map. This is all Europe. Okay. About 600 years ago, Europeans began to leave their lands and sail to other parts of the world, seeking spices, gold, and other riches. Some of these explorers arrived in North America. Imagine how surprised Native Americans and Europeans must have been to see each other. People who looked, dressed, and spoke very differently from themselves. Okay. Here the word spoke means talked, like this. Okay, but the word spoke also means one of the bars that connect the center of the wheel to the rim. So this part, not this. This is the rim, but this part is the spoke, like a wagon wheel or a bicycle wheel. The early explorers who came to North America were mostly interested in finding goods and riches that they could take back to Europe to sell. Many of these explorers learned vital skills from the Native Americans. Vital skills are critical or extremely important to someone's survival. The North Americans knew the land very well. They taught the Europeans many skills, including hunting, fishing, gathering, and farming, in exchange for their help. Europeans brought things to trade with the Native Americans, such as cloth. Okay. For many years, the Europeans traveled back and forth across the Atlantic Ocean. Most Europeans were contented to just trade with the Native Americans, but others became interested in starting settlements because they wanted to live on the continent as well. Settlements are places where people make their homes on a new land. The English started 2 early settlements in North America. In the 1600s, Plymouth, in what is now known as Massachusetts, and Jamestown, in what is now known as Virginia. So again, Plymouth, right here in Massachusetts, and Jamestown is probably in this general vicinity. So this is Virginia. So Jamestown was down here. So at first, the Native Americans helped them to survive. Do you remember how at Plymouth they celebrated the harvest together? The first Thanksgiving in America? The Europeans would not have been able to grow corn and squash for that meal without the help of Native Americans. As time passed, more and more Europeans arrived to start settlements in North America, even though Native Americans had already been living in their own communities on that same land. Fights over the land began to erupt as each group refused to share the land. The settlers claimed most of the land on the east coast of North America, land where the Native Americans had lived for many years. The word claimed means that the English said that the land belonged to them, even though the Native Americans have been living on that land for thousands of years. The British formed colonies or settlements ruled by faraway Great Britain from Massachusetts all the way to Georgia. Okay, so all right, so from Massachusetts and all the way down the coast through Rhode Island, Connecticut, New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, all the way down to Georgia right here. Okay. Eventually, some of the more adventuresome settlers wanted to explore the land to the west of them. Some of these was a young man named Daniel Boone. Daniel Boone was born in 1734 near the town of Reading, Pennsylvania. So here we have Pennsylvania, right here, Pennsylvania. Okay, so this is all on the East Coast right here. So if we look at it, we're way over here. Pennsylvania's over here, right on the edge of the ocean almost. So he's way over here. His father and mother owned a farm. Daniel and his brothers and sisters helped their parents plow the fields on the farm, but Daniel was never content in the open fields. He was curious about life in the woods around their farm and spent as much time as possible creating paths through the forest. He made friends with young Native American boys who lived in the wooded areas. They taught Daniel how to move silently through the forest and how to trap wild animals and catch fish in the streams. Daniel learned how to use a knife and a tomahawk at an early age. His father, seeing how interested Daniel was in hunting, taught Daniel how to use a special type of gun called a rifle. It was common for people to learn hunting and survival skills during this time in history, which is very different from today. Today, most people have the option to buy food and clothing rather than hunting for these resources for themselves. One day, while helping his father plow the field, Daniel asked if he could be allowed to help out the family in another way. "Father," he said, "since you taught me to shoot a rifle, I have practiced and practiced until I am the best shot for miles around. Let me hunt for food for our family." Daniel's father agreed, and soon the Boones were feasting on wild turkey and deer. In 1750, just before Daniel turned 16, the Boone family moved from Pennsylvania to the Yadkin River Valley of North Carolina, settling on the edge of the frontier. Okay, so let's take a look here. Let me bring it in just a little. So he moved from Pennsylvania to North Carolina, right here. And again, this area is still on the East Coast. They just moved from up here down to here. Still on the East Coast, though. It did not take long for the other settlers in his new home to discover that Daniel was one of the best woodmen for miles around. So woodmen are people who live or work in the forest. Daniel Boone lived and worked in the forest. Daniel began to explore his new surroundings. So exploration took him deep into the forest. He heard tales of buffalo to the west and wanted to try hunting other animals than the plentiful deer and bear that lived in the woods nearby. But Daniel was unable to go as far west as he wanted to go. Something was stopping him and other settlers from traveling further west. Can you guess what it might be? There were enormous mountains standing in his way. These mountains are called the Appalachian Mountains, and they stretch for miles from the present-day state of Maine all the way to Georgia. The mountains were heavily wooded. making them difficult to cross. They formed a natural barrier and blocked movement from one side of the mountains to the other. For this reason, few European settlers had left their colonies along with the eastern coast of North America to travel west. But Daniel knew that the Native Americans had crisscrossed these mountains for years. As he roamed through the densely forested hillsides, his curiosity about lands to the west grew stronger. Daniel began to ask everyone he met if they knew of a way to cross the mountains. Where did Daniel Boone want to go? Yeah, he wanted to go west. He wanted to go across these mountains and get to the west. Why did Daniel Boone and other English settlers want to go west? So Daniel Boone wanted to go west so he could explore and find new places to live. What kept the English settlers from moving west across the North America? Well, this picture right here shows the mountains, and the mountains prevented them from moving further west across North America. What are these called? They're called the Appalachian Mountains. Say Appalachian Mountains. How would you describe Daniel Boone? I would say Daniel Boone was a good hunter and a woodsman who was curious about how to travel west across the Appalachian Mountains. Do you think he will find a way over these mountains? Something to think about. In the read aloud you heard, it did not take long for the other settlers in his new home to discover that Daniel was one of the best woodsmen for miles around. Say the word woodsman. Another way to say woodsman is to say one's woodman. Woodsmen are people who lived in the woods and are good at hunting and live off the land. Woodsmen would find their own food, build their own houses or shelters, and live in the forest. The woodsman crossed paths in the forest. Pause the video and talk to somebody in the room or in the house with you about whether you would want to be a woodsman or not. And when you talk to them, make sure you're using complete sentences, and then go ahead and come back. Did you pause the video? What was that word you were talking about? Woodsman. Yeah, good job. All right. So right here, we have our timeline again. Only this time, it's going to look a little different. Oops. I got to fix the pictures first. All right, so originally we've said that the Native Americans were here. And then we said Christopher Columbus was here. And then the Pilgrims came. And then this picture is actually going to go in there. This is Daniel Boone. Okay. Daniel Boone's childhood and his explorations took place actually prior to the colonies declaring independence. So Boone goes in here, and then we're going to put in the Declaration of Independence. He was an adult around the time of the Boston Tea Party and Paul Revere's ride. Right. So today we completed lesson 1. Daniel Boone and the opening of the West, and our learning goal was I can describe the connection between the Appalachian Mountains and the settlers' inability to move west. Thank you for joining me today. I look forward to seeing you again tomorrow when we find out, maybe we're going to find out if he makes it across the Appalachian Mountains, as tomorrow's story is called Crossing the Appalachian Mountains. Until then, have a great day.